This is the biggest vein of ancient debris that's possible in Minecraft, because each chunk in the nether can generate up to 5 ancient debris, but if 4 chunks all generate this at the very corner, you can get a vein of 20 ancient debris. But this is so rare that a mathematician on an old Reddit post estimated there's only a 9% chance of this vein existing in all of Minecraft. Now get ready, because we're about to see some more theoretically possible things like this. Events that can happen within Minecraft, but will likely never be found. And a big thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Every stronghold generates with random patterns of stone bricks, mossy bricks, and infested bricks. These patterns are always different in every stronghold, except for some small sections that will always be normal stone bricks. That means it's technically possible to find a stronghold that's almost purely made of infested stone bricks. So when you break a single block, the entire structure starts falling apart around you as silverfish spawn, like you've stepped on some sort of landmine. It's also possible for the stronghold to be made entirely of mossy stone bricks, giving it an ancient appearance that you'd never normally see. However, the chance of this happening is so rare, there's probably not enough strongholds in existence to find this. But speaking of structures, a player by the name of Fanda created a Discord bot that tells you the chance of finding rare loot in structures. For example, in nether fortresses, there's a 1 in 13 chance to find obsidian in a chest. However, the rarest possible fortress chest has 16 obsidian, as this only happens once every 431 million chests, and it's impossible to find any more than this. But loot can get even rarer, because in end cities, one of the rarest possible chests is this one, with 6 pieces of diamond horse armor, which only has a 1 in 1.8 trillion chance of generating. But it's also possible to find an end city with 42 diamonds. However, this one only has a 1 in 5.6 trillion chance of happening. And believe it or not, this loot isn't even theoretical, because after doing some digging, I discovered that a few years ago, a seed finder by the name of Den Reeds used code to find this end city, which actually has the 42 diamond chest. But this is a rare anomaly for a different video. However, this doesn't even come close to the rarest theoretical chest of all time, which is a ruined portal with 8 enchanted golden apples, with a chance of finding this being 3.1766 times 10 to the power of minus 20%, or a 1 in 3.1 sextillion chance, which is so rare it goes beyond the number of chests that even exist in Minecraft. But fun fact, the most gapples ever found in a ruined portal is in this chest, discovered by a seed finder named Xinyu, that has 5 enchanted golden apples, which is a 1 in 597 billion chance. And this seed also has another chest with 5 gapples in the same coordinates in the nether. So yeah, seed finders are insane. All these possibilities are astronomically rare, but there's another occurrence which actually has a feasible chance of existing. Trial chambers always generate with at least a gap of 12 chunks between themselves and other trial chambers. And since most trial chambers don't extend more than 80 blocks across on one axis from their spawn point, it means that 2 trial chambers will never intersect. However, a player by the name of M33 Galaxy used code to simulate Minecraft's world generation and discovered it is possible for 2 trial chambers to be big enough to intersect. But the chance of this happening is at least a 1 in billions. However, there are countless trial chambers across all seeds, so this definitely exists somewhere out there, and he's currently using code to search for it, with the closest trial chambers he found being only 23 blocks apart, so I'll keep you all updated. But honestly, a 1 in billions chance is far too common for this video, so let's take a look at an even more rare occurrence. We all know there's a 1 in a trillion chance for an end portal to have 12 eyes of ender, which automatically activates it with no player intervention. However, not many people know that if an end portal generates at just the right location, there's a chance it can spawn with all 12 eyes without being activated. This is because of a rare glitch in the population chunk border, making the game think there's 2 portals instead of 1, a portal with 9 eyes and one with 3 eyes. However, this phenomenon is so unknown that it's only ever been documented once on this seed, but that means it's technically possible for a world to exist where all the end portals somehow generate glitched like this, making it so that you can't enter the end. Just imagine giving this seed to a speedrunner and making them think they're going insane when they see the end portals. But there's also other ways the game can be annoying, such as when a zombie spawns, it has between a 0 to 10% chance to summon reinforcements. That's why when you hit a zombie, you'll sometimes notice other zombies spawning out of nowhere. It's also technically possible that when a zombie calls for reinforcements, every single zombie that gets summoned can also spawn reinforcements. space, creating an endless wave of mobs that you have to deal with. But this still isn't as bad as what can happen with Drowned. You know when you're trying to loot ocean ruins and get ambushed by a group of these guys? Well, it's pretty annoying, right? But what would make it 100 times worse is if every drown that spawned had a trident, which would make swimming feel like getting shot at with machine guns. Not to mention if they all had the best enchantments on their tridents. Just look at how quickly they can go through my shield. In a matter of seconds, it's gone. These possibilities already go beyond the bounds of reality and will never happen in history. But to go even further into the realm of possibility, let's take a look at pillager outposts. Outposts usually generate with a few surrounding structures, such as tents, scarecrows, and cages, with a current record for the most surrounding structures being on this seed with 15 in total. However, a technical player called Andrew looked at the source code and found the maximum surrounding structures an outpost can have is 45. So it's possible to find an outpost with 45 iron golem cages. Like you've just found an army that's been captured. There's also a chance that instead of iron golems, each structure is a pair of scarecrows, making this outpost feel very unnatural and creepy. But according to Andrew, this occurrence is nearly impossible to happen because of collisions between the structures. But now let's move on to the next occurrence, which is the rarest theoretical death in Minecraft. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, War Thunder. Have you ever looked at a tank and thought, yeah, I could probably drive that? Well, War Thunder is your chance to find out. But not only tanks, you can control over 2,500 vehicles, including planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations, spanning early 20th century machines all the way to modern combat vehicles. And the best part is, you can get it for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. What I like most about War Thunder is just how good this game looks. The environments, lighting, and the authentic sound effects literally makes it feel like you're right there on the battlefield. Not to mention the in-depth customization system, with countless camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles. Again, War Thunder is free to play, so you're not losing anything by trying it out. And you can join the community of over 95 million players right now by using the links in the description and pinned comment. And if you're a new player or returning player who hasn't played in over 6 months on PC or console, you'll also receive a special bonus pack, including multiple premium vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, and the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, as well as 7 days of premium account, for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Now let's get back to the rarest possible death. The maximum number of mobs that can spawn at once in single player is 70, and they're all usually spread out across a large area. However, if about 30 of those mobs came to one location, a mechanic called entity cramming will make them take damage, as they're all squished together. For this to happen naturally in your world is almost impossible, but if you're very unlucky, there's a chance that all 70 mobs that spawn are Endermen, and they all keep teleporting directly on top of you, instantly killing you with entity cramming. And this can just keep happening over and over until you quit the game. So thank you, Mojang. This is literally unplayable. Now moving on, in jungles, there's something that can happen to trees which is incredibly rare. Every small jungle tree has a 20% chance to be classified as a cocoa tree, and each wood block on that tree also has a 25% chance to generate cocoa beans on each exposed side, as long as it's within 3 blocks of the bottom of the tree. That means each side of a jungle tree can generate 3 cocoa beans each, and the maximum beans on a tree is 12. This was calculated by one of Minecraft's smartest players called Xapple through analyzing the source code. However, this only has a 1 in 83 million chance of generating, but at least you can make a lot of hot chocolate with all these cocoa beans. If hot chocolate was actually in the game. Thanks again, Mojang. Literally unplayable. Where's the hot chocolate? But now that we've seen this fabled tree, let's move on and go deep underground. At the bottom of every Minecraft world, bedrock spawns in a randomly generated pattern to prevent players from falling out of the world. In total, there's 5 layers where bedrock can generate, but the game places it in uneven shapes and heights, so no 2 worlds will have exactly the same pattern. However, with the randomness of the bedrock, it's possible for a world to exist where there's no bedrock anywhere except for the bottom layer, making this feel like a budget super flat world. It's also possible for the opposite to happen, where all 5 layers are filled with bedrock, which really doesn't look any different from the top. But anyway, now let me tell you a little known fact about Minecraft. back in 2010 up until beta 1.7, for some reason your spawn point was always on sand, because it was the only valid spawn block. No matter how many times you made new worlds, there would always be sand beneath your feet. But a player called Nels discovered that theoretically, if someone found a seed where there was no sand in the spawn area, it's possible for you to become stuck in the loading screen forever, as the game couldn't find a place to spawn you. So thanks again Mojang, really making the game unplayable from the start, huh? But anyway, this same person who found this sand possibility did some more research into the source code and discovered something else that's theoretically possible. When you cure a zombie villager, it usually takes between 3 to 5 minutes to turn into a normal villager. However, not many people know that iron bars and beds within an 8x8 area each have a 30% chance of speeding up the conversion time by an extra tick, and this can happen up to 14 times per tick. But the game only does this check 1% of the time, and even if it chooses the absolute fastest base time of 3 minutes, you'd still need that 1% chance to succeed for 224 ticks in a row. However, if that happened with the zombie villager in an area fully covered with iron bars, there's a chance for the villager to be healed in only 12 seconds. But the odds of this happening are only a 1 in 4 times 10 to the power of 484 chance. At this point, it feels less like curing a villager and more like doing some sort of forbidden ritual. But if you thought that was crazy, let me introduce you to the rarest enchanted book. You might remember in a past video, I talked about how it was possible to use a fishing rod to catch an enchanted book with 12 enchantments, which is already insane to look at. However, in newer versions, the fishing RNG uses a completely different algorithm called Shiro, which can now have much rarer occurrences than before. And with this new RNG, a player by the name of Chris calculated how many fishing states are possible for enchanted books with different numbers of enchantments. For example, there are 2.59 times 10 to the power of 37 possible fishing states that can catch a book with 1 enchantment. And as you can see, this is very common. But to catch a book with 10 enchantments, there are 3.33 times 10 to the power of 26 possible states where that can happen. And this is still a huge number. However, to catch a book with 21 enchantments, there are 68.3 million possible states. And you can now see the chances are getting rarer and rarer the more enchantments a book has. For a book with 25 enchants, there are only 10.9 possible states out of all fishing catches, making this the realistic limit for how many enchants a book can have. But if we go further past this point, we get into the realm of true theoretical possibilities. There are only 0.000000874 possible fishing states that can catch a book with 28 enchantments. Yes, that's a microscopic fraction of a fishing state. But the theoretical limit is finding a book with 30 total enchantments, or as I like to call it, the Bible. There are only 3.50 times 10 to the power of -8 states that can catch this, which is a number so small it goes beyond the limits of possibility itself. That would be like fishing up a book that has almost every enchantment in Minecraft, which is so rare we need some of the world's smartest scientists to even calculate how to crack the Shiro algorithm and find it. So yeah, this is about as rare as you being subscribed to this channel. Please subscribe guys, we need 100,000. But now let's take a look at a very strange ruined portal. Ruined portals generate in many different shapes and sizes. However, you'll notice some obsidian is replaced with crying obsidian, which happens approximately 15% of the time. The biggest portal size has 31 obsidian blocks, but the chance for all of them to be crying obsidian is only a 1 in 347 quadrillion chance. However, because of all the ruined portals across every Minecraft seed, this actually has a feasible chance of existing, but of course it would be nearly impossible to find. But this portal is also completely useless, so if you're looking for it, congratulations, you just wasted your whole life searching for a portal that can't even light. But now let's enter the Nether, because there are some very weird things that can happen here as well. In Nether fortresses, a rare glitch makes it possible for blaze spawners to stack on top of each other. In fact, only one seed has ever been found where this happens, but it's technically possible for multiple Nether fortresses to overlap and all their blaze spawners stack on top of each other, creating a massive blaze tower, which feels like some sort of boss level. It's also possible possible to find a fortress with a hallway that never ends, since if multiple fortresses have perfectly overlapping hallways, it would just go on forever until the world border. So we've got ourselves a natural highway system. But now, if you make a portal to the overworld and go through it, it's possible for a zombie piglin to go through it as well. And each time a mob goes through the portal, the chunks on the other side are loaded for 15 seconds. So it's possible for zombie piglins to keep coming through the portal and flooding the overworld until they hit the mob cap and then go back through the portal again to keep the chunks loaded infinitely. I have no idea why they would do that, but it would be a very strange sight. Moving on from the nether, let's enter the end dimension to see the rarest end city ever. In the past, seeds have been found where two end ships from different end cities have crashed into each other and even dropped the elytra. But it's theoretically possible for this to happen to 4 end cities with 4 different ships crashing into each other. There's also a chance for all the end cities to generate on the highest points possible, which is on endstone at Y level 75. This makes it feel like some sort of war is going on and the end cities are meeting in the middle for negotiation. But before things get too heated, let's get away from this situation and go further out into the end. You know these small islands that generate randomly between the big islands? Well, it's technically possible to find a section of the end where all the space between the big islands is filled with small islands. And they're so close together that you can literally parkour between them. So I guess we can call this rip-off parkour civilization. Now let me show you something even cooler. If you throw an item inside the end gateway after beating the dragon, it force loads a 3x3 chunk area on the other side. But if the gateway appears in an area where 2 end ships have crashed into each other and the item frame with the elytra is broken with perfect velocity, it's possible that when you drop an item in the gateway, it loads the chunks and the elytra falls perfectly into the gateway and gets teleported straight onto the main island. So you can get an elytra without needing to travel to the outer islands. This was calculated to be possible by the legendary seed finder M33 Galaxy. However, he says this occurrence is so rare that it's likely no seed exists with it. But something else that M33 Galaxy found is that in versions between 1.18 and 1.20, there's a chance for you to spawn in mid-air on Java Edition, which is something that should never happen on any seed. The only way this is possible is if the 11x11 chunk radius within the spawn region is only water or lava below sea level, and if that happens you'll always spawn in the air at Y65. This can only exist if a seed is found with a giant exposed cave. But now, going back into the end, on older versions before the 1.9 update, the end pillars didn't generate in a circle around the exit portal. Instead, they were all scattered randomly across the island. So it's technically possible to find an end island with no pillars whatsoever on old versions. And I'm guessing the dragon must be pretty angry about that one. But anyway, going back to modern versions, when you throw an ender pearl, there's a 5% chance for an endermite to spawn. This mob isn't usually too bad on its own, but if the game wanted to be annoying, there's a chance that every single ender pearl that you throw for the rest of your life spawns an endermite, which in some situations is straight up a death trap. Come on Mojang, this is so unplayable. Alright, now let's pretend we can leave Minecraft running for billions of years. In a seed where the end portal is already completed, it's possible for endermen to randomly carry blocks from the overworld and bring them into the end. And if they happen to build staircases all the way up to the end crystals, it's possible for a skeleton to randomly enter the end from the portal and get attacked by the dragon. The skeleton could get angry at the dragon and shoot at it but miss, accidentally hitting the end crystals and destroying them. Then it's possible for this to repeat with multiple skeletons hitting the dragon, and since it can't regenerate, it can kill it, meaning it's theoretically possible for mobs to beat the game by themselves. So I guess we can call this the rarest speedrun in Minecraft. Everything we've seen so far is astronomically unlikely to happen, but there are things possible that go beyond our understanding of reality itself. A bit is the smallest unit of data stored in a computer, and bits can only be in one of 2 states, 0 or 1. Every file, including Minecraft worlds, are built by long sequences of bits, and computers usually flip bits billions of times per second as part of normal processing. However, in very rare cases, bits can flip on their own because of things like electrical instability, and even energy particles from the sun's rays can strike memory cells and change their electrical charge, causing bits to flip. These unintended flips can corrupt files, crash programs, or even slightly alter stored data. However, through sheer possibility, there's a chance for all the bits in your computer to be perfectly flipped, causing Minecraft's data to be changed in such a way to make the game downgrade versions. Yes, it's possible for you to click on the latest release and end up playing version 1.0. It's also possible for the perfect sequence of bit flipping to change Minecraft's data into an update that Mojang hasn't even released yet. So whenever you play, there's a slight chance you could get the end update before anyone else. However, this is so unfathomably rare that the estimated chance of it happening is a 1 out of 10 to the power of minus 3.01 times 10 to the power of 12, which would break the entire universe if it actually happened. But this is child's play compared to what else is possible. But this next one is so rare that we need to travel beyond the curvature of space and time to even comprehend it. So I hope you know your quantum physics. Quantum fluctuations are tiny changes in energy that occur everywhere in empty space. They constantly create and destroy microscopic variations in particle fields, but only on very small scales. These fluctuations can slightly disturb individual particles. However, from a statistical viewpoint, if we consider the space of all possible arrangements of particles in the universe, it's theoretically possible for a configuration to exist where every atom in your PC gets arranged with 79 protons in its nucleus, meaning there's a chance that while you're playing Minecraft, a spontaneous atomic reorganization can turn your PC into solid gold. But this is so improbable that it's best we don't even think about how rare it is. But despite this literally being one of the rarest occurrences in the universe, it's nothing compared to the true rarest thing in Minecraft, which is loading in a seed and randomly finding this strange structure. Thanks for watching, and again thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Play for free now on PC, console or mobile using my links below. And remember, if you're new or returning after 6 months on PC or console, you'll also receive a limited time bonus pack, so don't miss out. And if you want to see the rarest things that have actually been found in Minecraft, click the video on screen now.